2016 will go down as the hottest year on record, and the North and South poles can't handle the heat. Climate scientists say polar sea ice the size of India has disappeared. That's about as big as 2 Alaskas. Now the amount of sea ice at the poles is at a record low for the season. CBS News contributor and theoretical physicist Dr. Michio joins me now. It's nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
All right.
So first of all, let's just start with explaining what sea ice is and why this is so significant, the melting of it.
Well, if you're thinking about buying beachfront property anytime soon, you may want to think twice because sea levels are going to start to rise for 2 reasons. First of all, the Earth is heating up, as you said, and water expands when it gets warmer. That causes sea level rise. But second of all, and this new study is quite damaging, the size of the North and polar cap regions are shrinking to the tune of twice the size of Alaska. And that water has to go someplace. And it's going to wind up in somebody's living room in the future. In fact, it's projected that in the coming decades, sea levels could rise maybe 3 feet, perhaps maybe even 10 feet by the end of this century. Where we are standing right now could be underwater.
In less than half a century.
That's right. Again, these numbers depend upon which computer studies you use, which assumptions you make. But most of the studies are converging on the fact that A, the Earth is heating up, B, the ice caps are beginning to melt and crack, even the South Pole is beginning to crack, and 3, that means that water's got to go someplace, and it could wind up in someone's living room.
Let me read you this statistics. I think this is staggering. The National Snow and Ice Data Center says the amount of sea ice at the poles is almost 1.5 million square miles less than its 1981-2010 average. So did it just melt really quickly in the past few years? Are we just noticing this now?
Well, if you take a look at submarines that went to the North Pole 50 years ago, like the Nautilus, and then compare it with the results of today, we find that the ice has actually decreased by 50% in the last 50 years. I mean, think about that. That means that in our lifetime, we're actually seeing the melting of the polar ice region. And by satellites, you can see that in summer times, there is no more North Polar ice caps.
Right.
And so kids in the future will say that Santa Claus is obviously a myth because there is no North Pole for Santa Claus to live and make all the toys.
How about the area around the South Pole? Because it has steadily been getting warmer, but there was a time when it was getting colder. What happened?
That's right. Some of the skeptics say, bah, humbug. Look at the South Polar region. It's actually getting colder, not warmer. But we think we know the reason why. There is the polar vortex. That is a hurricane, literally a cold hurricane over the North Pole and the South Pole. And we think that the polar vortex in the South Pole prevented warmer air from coming in. And that's temporary, because now even the South Pole is beginning to look like the North Pole, i.e. it's beginning to get smaller and temperatures are rising just as we would expect.
So what does that mean for the rest of the world if the South Pole continues to get warmer?
First of all, it means that storms are going to be much more severe. The latest study I saw shows that the ferocity of storms could be 5 times what it has been historically. So think of the worst storm of the past year. The worst storm, multiply that by 5. And that's what winters are going to be like. Second of all, if you're near the oceans, and even though you don't have a hurricane, simple storms and nor'easters could throw water, paralyzing the subway system, paralyzing mass transit. So even if your city is above water, it means that water could definitely overflow into your living room in case there's a very bad storm, which will be more fierce and more common in the future. So the so-called 100-year storms, we're going to see them much more frequently.
Is any of this alarming to you or just something that scientists have been warning of for a long time?
Well, you know, I used to be a skeptic. I used to say, come on, humbug. The Earth is so big, we're so small. How can humans constantly change the weather? But it's happening now in our lifetimes. All the indicators are pointing up, showing that temperatures are rising, glaciers are receding. Summertime is a week longer than normal. Every farmer knows that. Mosquitoes are going north because of the heating of the planet Earth. So it means that tropical diseases are also going to spread north. All the indicators are going northward.
Such as Zika, right?
Yeah, that's why I stopped being a skeptic and I began to realize that human activity really is driving this global warming.
All right. Such staggering statistics, all of it. Thank you so much, Dr. Michio. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
on all of these cases, from Bill Clinton to Tom Brady to Hillary Clinton on this, isn't the lying the greater sin? The sociopathic lying, the way Anthony Weiner can look into a camera and go, wasn't me.
It's called politics. I mean, everybody, like...
But wait, isn't it matter what you lie about? Isn't lying about blowjobs way less important than lying about the things Republicans lie about? Like whether... Like global warming isn't real. Do you think
or weapons of mass destruction?
Ted Cruz, who has degrees from Princeton and Harvard, do you really think he thinks global warming is a hoax, or does he know it's true, but he tells that to the rubes who vote for him because they believe it? Which is a worse lie?
I genuinely like debating you. One of your great failings is your inability to see the intellectual response in the global warming debate. The response, which is you can't predict the future.
Well, then
why do anything?
Lame. Well,
why do anything?
You can't predict the future, so why should we do anything?
Thousands of millions of variables dictating what the climate will be 100 years from now, and you're going to give me the Celsius it will be? That is intellectually dishonest.
What are you talking about? I mean, you have to be a seer to make policy?
Right.
Like, what does that even mean?
That's a terrible argument.
You ask a Republican,
that's terrible.
Should women be able to have abortions after 20 weeks? They have plenty to say on that, but when you ask about global warming, I'm not a scientist, man. I'm a guy. I mean, like, what? Like, what are you talking
about? Come on, Will. You don't.
Your responses to me. Your responses to me.
You don't.
Come on.
But you don't think it's arrogant to look in the face of every scientist on the planet who doesn't work for Shell and tell them, I know just as well as you do what's going on. Really?
No, that's not the argument. That's my original point. You don't seem to understand the opposition's argument, which is not that the scientists are wrong about where we are today, but there's hubris in predicting 100 years of temperatures with millions of variables.
But it's not 100 years. It's happening now. It is happening now.
Global warming is designed to prevent something that has not yet happened. The global warming policy.
That is not true.
We're taking like 2-minute showers in Los Angeles. Not you and me, but everyone.
Is that because of climate change?
Here's the thing. You cannot say any specific event is directly attributable to climate change. We don't know because there are absolutely, of course, have always been hurricanes and bad storms and all this shit. But that's like saying, you know what? I don't know which bag of Cheetos gave me cancer.
Right.
But I ate shit forever and I smoked and I don't know which cigarette did it, but I do know that putting toxins in my body is going to make me sick. And putting toxins in the atmosphere is going to make us all sick.
Geologists are out with a very startling warning that Southern California is overdue for a major and possibly catastrophic earthquake. A new study says it's expected to hit along the San Andreas Fault north of Los Angeles. It could have a magnitude of 7.5 or higher. That's big. For the first time, scientists are closer to knowing when it could strike. CBS News science and futurist contributor Michio is a physics professor at the University of New York City. Good morning to you, Professor. When I went to see you in the green room, you said, I'm here with doom and gloom. But let me tell you, I grew up in high school and junior high. We've been hearing about an earthquake coming in California for years. What makes this different?
Well, before it was all hocus pocus and black magic predicting earthquakes. And I was born in California, 10 miles from the San Andreas Fault, living under the shadow of the big one. Now we can quantify this. And we now know that the San Andreas Fault is locked, loaded, and ready to rumble. We now realize that the people of Los Angeles are living on borrowed time. We now know that by digging into the soil, we can go down 1,200 years into the past, looking at soil laid down hundreds of years ago, and we find 10 major earthquakes in the last 1,000 years. The difference in time is roughly 100 years on average. The last big one was 160 years ago. So according to one calculation, we're 60 years overdue for another big one.
You're talking about the great 1857 quake, right?
That's right. It was a huge 7.9 earthquake that was so big it actually liquefied the soil north of Los Angeles, like halfway between Bakersfield and L.A.
And the tremors in that quake, by some reports, it lasted up to 3 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're not talking about just a few seconds, like maybe in a Northridge type earthquake. We're talking about an earthquake that lasts for minutes. And also the U.S. Geologic Survey did an estimate of property damage. What could happen if the 1857 earthquake happens today? The numbers are frightening. $200 billion in property damage. That's billion with a B.
Yeah.
50,000 people injured. 5 major skyscrapers toppled because of a gigantic earthquake, a 7.8 in this study.
Well, you're not sweetness and light this morning with the information you're giving, but it is important. So if we live in if people who live in that area, what would you recommend them to do other than freak out?
First of all, don't panic, because the next big earthquake could happen decades from now.
That's counterintuitive, Professor.
We don't know precisely when. Seismology is not a predictive science. However,
don't panic.
Schools. I think schools should have a special session to teach their kids what to do, where to go, how to communicate in the process of an earthquake. Families should meet with everyone in the family. Do you have batteries, first aid kits, water, food? Who do you contact with? Do you have like a radio, a transistor radio? Little things like this.
They should have that.
They should have that.
Right now.
Right now. And then longer term, building codes have to be accentuated, I think. And also power lines have to be reinforced, and redundancies, so we have power and buildings don't collapse unnecessarily.
You're saying we may have decades, though. I mean, the energy's been building up, but it could be, I mean, we could be another 10, 20, 30 years.
It could be tomorrow. It could be decades from now. We just know that the San Andreas Fault has been moving at about an inch a year.
Yeah.
So it's like winding up a clock.
Yes.
It gets tighter and tighter. An inch a year is the rate at which it's been tightening.
Wow.
Therefore, it's a law of physics. All that tension has got to go someplace. And so it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah. Well, Michio Kaku, always great to have your expertise this morning, however scary. Sometimes it's asteroids and meteors. Today it's earthquakes. Thank you.
Cape, Cheshire. Filmed on June the 29th, 2008. While innocently filming a plane, an unknown disc-shaped craft appears in the skies above the town Elworth. Although multiple witnesses report the sighting to the authorities, no record can be found. Southern England, June 1976. During the filming of the first ever commercial flight of a British Airways Concorde, a small spherical object appears in shot. The craft curiously investigates the Concorde, then disappears into the sky at an incredible speed. Here we look at the original footage. The Kodak company analyzed the footage, claiming the anomaly was due to a flare of the camera. Yet, no video analysis or evidence to disprove this footage has ever been disclosed to the public. Birmingham, April the 10th, 2010. An unidentified object is seen and captured on film by a passing motorist. Shortly after, what looked to be military-owned jets arrive in the scene.
Tell you that homes have been severely damaged. There are situations here that families are coming back to absolutely nothing. You have downed trees, as you can see before me. You have power lines that are down. You have whole power poles that have been taken, literally ripped out of the ground and are leaning over. It's awful to witness, especially awful when you see the looks and the horror on the faces of the individuals who live inside these homes, and they have nothing left. We met one family who came back. Everything inside their house was destroyed, and the only thing remaining was their pit bull dog. And they were happy that he was alive and well. They came back to assure that. Right next door to them was their landlord, and in fact, the daughter of the landlord, we're told, rode out the night here, and she fortunately was okay. But as you well know, at least one person in this nearby town of Ottawa was killed when a falling tree branch fell on top of him. Not here, but you can look at the size of the trunks of the trees here that have been broken off, and you can see where that would be quite possible, or someone could be killed by a falling tree branch. Over here, this is the Pinkleton glass factory. In fact, that factory, the fire chief tells me, is where the name of this town comes from. It was once called the National Plate Glass Factory. It employs about 250 people or so. At one time, it employed thousands of people. And to give you a context of just how bad the damage is here, the fire chief told me there is no way they're getting back into this building. You can look at the roof and the siding completely blown off of the frame of this building. And so that is a major cleanup as well. And I have to tell you, the other thing about this is just how many people this one tornado affected. There are 500 families whose homes were impacted here. That's a quarter of the town of Naplate. So it is really hitting this place hard. The governor of Illinois stopped through here to reassure families that the state would be here for them. And in fact, last night he enacted the state's Emergency Response Operations Center so that they could hit the ground running this morning and ensure that they would be here to provide help and assistance to many of the families who are, quite frankly, going to be displaced.
And Michelle, in just a few last seconds we have with you, we were watching some of the footage of just the size and strength of that tornado. You're showing us people's lives have been literally turned upside down. How much of a warning did they have to make a plan of escape?
You know, the people that I spoke with said that the sirens went off at least 5 minutes before the tornado actually hit. So in terms of the first response, not the first response, but the first indicator that danger was on its way, they said they were forewarned, and it gave them enough time to warn their families and to tell them not to go to, or at least not to come to this area, that they stayed far away.
I mean, at least they had 5 minutes, but imagine having just that amount of time to figure out how to completely get out of the way. Michelle Miller giving us some great insight there in Naplate, Illinois. Thanks, Michelle.
dozens of homes from Oklahoma to Wisconsin. At least 24 people were killed, and at least 2 people rather were killed, and dozens more were hurt. The massive system stretches across more than 1,000 miles. So far, 26 tornadoes have been reported across 5 different states. David Begno's in Chautauqua, Wisconsin. That's one of the hardest hit communities. David, good morning.
Gail, good morning. It is still raining as we get our first real look this morning at the damage, which spans nearly 50 miles. 50 miles here in Wisconsin. At this property, it's as if somebody took a knife and sliced off the treetops. Bulldozed what was on this slab. But I want you to look at the back part of the property. That house back there, it's as if it was untouched except for a few shingles on the roof that were merely displaced, as what's believed to have been a tornado hopscotch through here. 10 minutes down the road, as the crow flies, there is a mobile home park that was hit, and the damage is severe. Video captured from above this trailer park in Wisconsin shows the power of what is believed to be a tornado.
We pulled walls off of people and then carried them, put them on stretchers, leg injuries, arm injuries. It's nothing I've ever seen in my 20-plus year career in law enforcement.
Down power lines, trees cut off at their trunks, and a massive field of debris has littered the neighborhood many call home. One person has died at this trailer park.
These are people we work with, that we go to school with, and they're our friends and our neighbors.
All my neighbors are okay.
In Elk City, Oklahoma, a tornado tore through this subdivision. At least 100 structures were damaged and more than 50 destroyed. Elk City Mayor Bill Helton.
The devastation was, it's hard to explain. It looked like some of the homes just exploded. Of course, some of them looked like they've been, blown apart by high winds.
The winds tossed buses and trucks in this lot like matchbox cars. And reports of people trapped in their homes kept rescue crews working overnight. A 53-year-old man was killed after his car was thrown several hundred feet, pinning him between his vehicle and his home. Our affiliate in Oklahoma City says that man was in his house, called 911, said, "I'm going to my shelter," and never made it off his property. Nor today, if you live in the upper Midwest, you are under a severe weather threat.
The deadly tornado that ripped through Oklahoma on Friday was the widest one ever recorded in the U.S. It was more than 2.5 miles across. Winds hit 295 miles an hour. The National Weather Service says it was an EF5. That is the strongest category. It killed 19 people. And to give you some perspective, if that tornado had hit the southern tip of Manhattan, it would have covered the entire length of the island. That gives me the chills. Wow.
Storms, but we are just watching this one thunderstorm go back over the weather 3, and this is the one that's had a history of rotation. There's no history of damage with this, but there is a history of rotation with this storm for the last almost 3 hours now, as it's pushed across the eastern part of our viewing area. And so now we have that tornado warning until next few minutes for Edgecombe County, eastern Edgecombe County. But really the rotation with that is almost out of Edgecombe. There it is there. We'll show you again right in this area is where there's the rotation. So the Edgecombe County line is right here. It's moving out of Edgecombe, and it's going to straddle the Halifax County line. That's why that warning was issued, and for eastern sections of Halifax County until 8:15, because it's got a long distance to go there if it can hold together. There's a good chance, there's at least some chance that its warning will be canceled early if the rotation does diminish, but it's still there, and that means that there's the potential for a tornado on the ground. We haven't gotten any reports of that, but folks in mainly now eastern Halifax County in our viewing area, you need to take cover. That Palmyra community there, east of Scotland Neck. Again, pretty rural area, but folks, if you're along this area around Highway 903, Hobgood Road, Winslow Road, those areas of eastern Halifax County, get into a safe spot right away. There may be a tornado not that many miles away from you, pressing to the northeast at about 30 miles per hour. There's some heavy rain with that, and a lot of cloud-to-ground lightning as it moves eastward. And even if there isn't a tornado, it easily could be a damaging wind gust to 60 miles per hour or so.
That's right. And zooming out once again, if you are just now joining us, we do have 2 active warnings at this point. So we have a tornado warning out for Halifax County, also more of the same, a severe thunderstorm warning. Watching 2 areas of rotation at this point, but just looking at a wider view, pretty much things are a lot, not seeing as much activity farther to the south near Raleigh, Smithfield, Sanford, Chris. That severe threat going down the farther south you go, and that's because that warm front is lifting to the north. And really the strongest strongest storms right now. That's near Henderson, Roanoke Rapids, along with these storms that are under a warning. So looking at this severe thunderstorm warning out for central sections of Halifax County. As I mentioned earlier, this